Some planes were built to break speed records. Others? To break logic entirely. From flying pancakes to bizarre twin fuselage monsters, these designs weren't just ugly, they actually flew. Somehow. So strap in, because these aren't your average jets. These are the 10 weirdest aircraft ever cleared for takeoff. Against all odds. Number 10. The 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 Optica, the flying goldfish bowl. Imagine if a helicopter, a bug-eyed owl, and a luxury golf cart had a baby. That's the 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 Optica. Designed in the UK in the 1970s for low-speed observation work, it features a fully glazed bubble-like cockpit with 360-degree visibility and absolutely no regard for aerodynamics. It looks like a mini submarine duct taped to a glider, but it actually flew, and quite well. It could stay airborne for over 8 hours, had a cruise speed of 130 knots, and was so quiet it could spy on people without them noticing, which is maybe why the police loved it. Sadly, after some mysterious fires destroyed several aircraft, the program evaporated, probably under surveillance. Number 9. The Goodyear inflatable. Yep, a blow-up plane. What's lighter than air and dumber than trusting a balloon at 10,000 feet? Meet the Goodyear inflatable, a real military experiment from the 1950s, designed to be parachuted behind enemy lines and inflated with a bicycle pump. Seriously. Made of rubberized fabric and inflated to 25 psi, the inflatable had a single-engine pusher prop, a 35-foot wingspan, and could fly over 400 miles. Its mission? Let downed pilots or spies escape enemy territory. And it worked. Sort of. It flew, but one test pilot fatally crashed, and the US Army quietly deflated the program, because maybe, just maybe, combat conditions and balloon planes don't mix. Number 8. The Stipa-Caproni, the flying barrel. Built in Italy in 1932, the Stipa-Caproni is best described as a giant flying vacuum cleaner with wings. Its entire fuselage was a duct, an early exploration of jet propulsion before jet engines were a thing. Technically a piston-prop aircraft, it had a hollow tubular body that funneled the propeller's thrust through an enclosed chamber. It was the aeronautical version of yelling into a megaphone, and surprisingly, it flew smoothly and stably, albeit very slowly. Top speed, just 81 miles per hour. Nickname, the Flying Barrel, and yet, its design directly inspired jet engine concepts. Ridiculous? Oh yeah. But revolutionary? Also, oh yes. Number 7. The Vought V-173, the flying pancake. What happens when an engineer decides wings are overrated and breakfast is inspirational? You get the Vought V-173, a circular gliding wing built during World War II with a spinning prop on each side and a shape that screamed, "Griddle me." This all-lifting body concept was designed to take off from aircraft carriers without catapults. Despite its flat, round appearance, it actually had excellent lift. Pilots reported smooth handling and the ability to hover. Sort of. Nicknamed the Flying Pancake, the V-173's weird shape led to its successor, the XF-5U, which never made it to production, but it did fly, and it looked like a breakfast special on takeoff. Number 6. The Bugatti 100p. Race car, but it flies. You know Ettore Bugatti for fast cars. But in the 1930s, he wanted to build the world's fastest plane, and it looks like he might have tried it after 4 espressos. The Bugatti 100p had forward-swept wings, twin V12 engines mounted behind the cockpit, and contra-rotating props driven through a complex gear system. It was fast, it was sleek, it was dangerous, and it never flew during its time. The only working replica finally flew in 2015 and crashed in 2016, tragically killing the pilot, but for one brief moment, the Bugatti 100p proved it could actually fly, even if it looked like an Art Deco spaceship. Number 5. The Caspian Sea Monster, the ground effect beast. Technically not a plane in the traditional sense, the 𝐾M plane, aka the Caspian Sea Monster, was a Soviet Cold War experiment that flew just above the water using ground effect. It looked like a plane, it had wings, it had 10 jet engines mounted on the front like some kind of overcompensating goose, but it flew at altitudes of just 10 to 15 feet, skimming the sea like a giant speedboat from hell. It was almost 100 meters long, which is longer than a 747, and could carry hundreds of tons of cargo, but after a crash in the late 80s, it was left to rot. Today it sits abandoned on a beach. Massive, rusting, and still absurd. Number 4. The NASA AD-1, the tilted wing time traveler. From the front, it looks normal. From the top, it looks broken. The NASA AD-1 was an experimental aircraft from the late 1970s with a pivoting wing that could rotate up to 60 degrees in flight, making it look like someone installed a spoiler from a Hot Wheels set. The idea was to improve fuel efficiency and reduce drag at high speeds. In theory, that's great. In reality, though, it was hard to control and extremely sensitive to crosswinds. It flew 79 test flights, and while it didn't revolutionize aviation, it did prove that sometimes the weirdest ideas are worth trying, even if they look like someone crashed Microsoft Paint into an airplane. We've seen flying pancakes and inflatable escape plans, but the top 3? Well, these designs take weird to cruising altitude. Number 3. The McDonnell XF-85 Goblin, the parasite fighter. During the Cold War, the US Air Force had an idea. What if we stuffed a fighter jet inside a bomber? Enter the XF-85 Goblin, a tiny egg-shaped interceptor designed to be carried inside the bomb bay of a B-36 and deployed mid-air to fight off enemy aircraft. Yes, it was a parasite plane. It was only 15 feet long, it had no landing gear, it had to redock mid-air, and looked like someone tried to 3D print a fighter and gave up halfway. Only 2 were built, and test flights proved the docking system was a nightmare. Still, it flew. Barely. But the Goblin earns its place in aviation's Hall of Weird for even being attempted. Number 2. The Christmas Bullet, the plane that killed on contact. There's bad design, and then there's the Christmas Bullet, a World War I era biplane that achieved the rare feat of killing every pilot who ever flew it. Designed by Dr. William Christmas, who is neither an engineer nor humble, the plane had no struts or bracing wires. He believed the wings should flap freely. Spoiler alert, they did! Both prototypes disintegrated mid-air on their first flights. Spectators reportedly ran for cover, and the US Army quietly canceled the program, probably while lighting the blueprints on fire. The fact that this death trap ever left the ground is both horrifying and a testament to how little people understood aerodynamics in 1919. Number 1. The Caproni Ca.60 Novaplano, the flying apartment building. Italy strikes again, and this time it's with an aircraft that looks like someone taped 3 biplanes together and dared it to fly. The Caproni Ca.60 Novaplano has a 9-wing, triple fuselage flying boat designed in 1921 to carry 100 passengers across the Atlantic. It stood 30 feet tall, had 8 engines, and weighed more than 30 tons. Its first flight? Well, it lifted off, flew about 300 meters, and then promptly crashed into Lake Maggiore. But the wreck was so spectacular they didn't even try to rebuild it. Ever. But hey, for a brief moment, the Novaplano was airborne, and that's enough to make it the weirdest aircraft that ever actually flew.